Welcome in to the Be Unexpected podcast with Wyatt and Jake. Today we're joined by former Hastings College volleyball player Mikayla Callaghan. Mikayla, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Wyatt?
Good. So real quick
Good.
story, Mikayla went to college with my twin brother Weston, and then her husband Drew Callaghan and him were on the basketball team, best friends, and Weston tells me that you taught him how to make food in college, basically. So
I tried. Now he's a chef, so here we are.
yeah, it's like you started his career for him. So, so, so Mikhail, why don't you just go into and tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. So like Wyatt said, I went to college. I went to Hastings College where I played volleyball. And while playing volleyball, I got my degree in business administration. Um, and then after that, I got my master's degree at Hastings because I was a graduate assistant for the Hastings College volleyball team afterwards with Coach Matt Buttermore, who is now the UNO volleyball coach in Omaha. And then from there, I have been coaching some club volleyball stuff, or I was in Kansas City until I had some medical things come up, which we'll dive into, I'm sure, in a little bit. But yeah, that's just a brief introduction about me. I currently work as a social media strategist at CHI Health, which I love doing. And so, yeah, I'm currently 7 months pregnant with my first baby. So, Drew and I are really excited to welcome our first baby into our family. But yeah, that's just a brief introduction about me.
Awesome. I bet with like your volleyball skills and Drew's height being 6'7", she'll be a great volleyball player.
I hope so. That's what we hope for her, for what she wants to do, but we love her
Yeah.
in volleyball. So
So growing up, who really got you into volleyball growing up?
sure. So I was fortunate enough to have a parent that owned a volleyball facility and club. My dad really got into volleyball with one of my older sisters, and so he was the coach of their team, which then transitioned into a volleyball club, which was super well known in Lincoln, which is where I grew up. And so I grew up going to her volleyball practices with my dad and my sister Jill, who I actually played with at Hastings. And so I was super interested from a super young age. And then from there, um, I played volleyball. I as early as third grade, just YMCA stuff. My dad eventually opened up a club. I remember visiting a bunch of different facilities where he would have his club volleyball program at. And then eventually we landed on a spot which he owned for a really long time until COVID hit. But I grew up in the gym there every single day, all summer long. Um, I didn't always want to be there, but my dad always made me, which I knew I was probably a brat growing up. Like, Dad, I just want to go to the pool today with my friends, or I just want to hang out with my siblings at home. He's like, nope, you're coming to the gym for volleyball. Which then at the time, I probably, again, was a brat, but looking back on it now, it ultimately led me to getting a scholarship to play in college. And then having a great success throughout my volleyball career. So my dad definitely pushed me growing up to be good at volleyball and to have the drive to play as long as I did. And I think something special, which why I know that you can relate to with Wes, just having my sister Jill with me along the whole ride. I feel like we always butted heads. We were this exact same position. But we both together learned to love the game together. And I mean, we played YMCA, middle school, high school, and college and club volleyball together. So my dad and my sister Jill were definitely, you know, pushed me and motivated me to get into the sport.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always nice to have that sibling that you can compete with and practice with all
Right.
the time. So,
Right, for sure.
were you two the only two that played volleyball in your
So
family?
yeah, I had an older sister that played. She played through high school, and then I have another older sister because I have a big family. She was good at volleyball, but she ultimately loved cross country just as much, which a lot of my siblings also ran cross country and were successful with that. And then we have a younger sister who we actually got to play with in high school for a year as well. And she played volleyball through high school too. But Jill and I were the only ones that actually went on and played college volleyball.
Okay, yeah. And then what year were you and your sister Jill got to Hastings and you guys played together?
So I got to Hastings in the fall of 2013, and then Jill came in 2014. So
Okay,
she's
so
just a year
right
younger than.
behind each other. All
Yep,
right. So when you got to Hastings, what was the team like, especially when they were like recruiting? Were they really like good, like top notch, or were they
sure.
kind of in the middle of the pack?
Yeah, I mean, they had some success a couple of years before. They made a good run in the national tournament. Um, with Coach Buttermore, he was only there for a season or two. I can't remember how long before I got there, but I had a really interesting freshman class. Coach Buttermore was trying to rebuild the program, so I was one of 16 freshmen that year to join because ultimately he was trying to rebuild the program. They had a lot of great athletes that were already there. And so, really, it was just, let's see who else we can bring along to help build the program up, which ultimately led to something super successful. But by the time I graduated, there's only four of us in that class remaining, which happens a lot in college athletics.
Mm.
But yeah, when I got there, we were okay. We did fine my freshman year, but we definitely saw a lot of growth within the time that I was there.
So like, what adversity would you say you personally went through going from playing like high school volleyball to college volleyball?
Sure. I was fortunate enough to be on a really good high school volleyball team. I played at Lincoln Southwest. And so we were a class A school. So I think just the competition was just right up there as well. I was in the same class as Kelly Hunter, who is an assistant coach for Nebraska now, and the Ralston twins. And they played for Papillion South, who was the number one high school in the whole United States. And so growing up, I had to play against them every year, whether that would be high school or club. And so I was fortunate enough to have a lot of the competition experience already there. I think the biggest thing for me, I would say, I don't know, just coming in with 16 girls, there's a lot of competition. Especially myself, there's probably four or five of us that were defensive specialists that came in my freshman year. So really just keeping your head straight. And, while these are my teammates, I am competing for a spot still because I mean, Division 1 and some Division 2 programs, they're not filling five defensive specialist spots within one class. You're not necessarily competing against that many other people in your position. But I think the great thing about the NAIA and Division 3 schools is there is a lot of players within the same positions who are forced to compete, which ultimately I feel like makes you better, raises your volleyball IQ. And so I think that was challenging but super rewarding at the same time.
So you go throughout your career and um, how do you guys end up doing from your freshman year to your senior year? You guys really improved, right?
Yeah, so gosh, I can't even remember. I don't think we made it past the first round of the conference tournament my freshman year. Sophomore year, we got a little bit better. Same thing, finished kind of middle of the pack in our conference and did not qualify for the national tournament. And then my junior year, we did qualify for the national tournament. We got a bid and we finished ninth. And so we made it all the way past pool play, which it's a little bit different in the NAI. You're placed in a pool. The first day you play 3 games, second day you play 3 games, and then ultimately the top 16 teams will play in the final 2 days. And so we finished ninth my junior year, and we were fortunate enough to have the exact same squad my senior year. We had a really solid core group of girls. And I think ultimately the thing that led us to be so successful my senior year, which was the year we won the national championship, is that we all just had a great bond together.
Mm.
As cheesy as it sounds, I think our bond led to, trusting each other more on the court. We never bickered. We all had such high volleyball IQs, which Our coaches definitely were a huge part of that. I think we were all great athletes, but it really, for me, and the thing that attracted me to be a coach eventually too were our coaches. And so I think just all those things at hand led us to winning a national championship my senior year. So we were very fortunate that we didn't have a big graduating class my junior year. But
Yeah. So were you guys like a favorite going in? Were you guys top five most of the year then your senior year?
yep, we started top five, and then Midland University was actually number one for quite a bit of the season. And then when we went into conference play, they had beat us at home, which was our just second loss of the season. So that was defeating. But then we went to Midland later in the season, and we were ranked third and they were ranked first. And then we ended up beating them in 4 or 5. And so then we flip flopped and we were ranked first, which was the first time Hastings College Volleyball had ever been ranked number one in program history. And so we went in number one. When we went into the national tournament, we were not the favorite to win. I mean, we knew in our hearts, it was kind of unspoken that we knew that we would probably win
Mm.
if we really gave it our all and stuck together. But we never really talked about it. And I think that's something that Nebraska volleyball teams all do a great job of. It's not the overhype of like, you know, we're going to win because we're the best. I think it was just kind of an unspoken thing. And so I knew that we were going to win secretly,
Yeah.
but we are definitely one of the favorites to win. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Like teams that brag about it usually get upsetted, and
Right.
like you said, the teams that are humble about it, like they end up winning the whole thing. So
Right. We didn't want to get too hot in our heads. We just all knew what we had to do. We were sweeping teams the whole season. And then we got to the tournament. We're like, wow, we are pretty good. But we were fortunate. The GPAC, which has Midland, Dort, who were also top 5 teams, Northwestern the entire season. So just, I mean, just like all of the schools, like Nebraska volleyball, for instance, in the or in the Big Ten, they're always playing against the best of the best.
yeah,
UNO just won the Summit League. They have great teams in their league, so they're always competing against teams that are really great. So we're fortunate in Nebraska to have that competition. And so ultimately, when we got to the tournament, we knew like, okay, like we are prepared and ready to win this thing just
yeah.
based on growing up in Nebraska and having the competition that we did.
So going from your playing career, like that's a great way to end it, win a national
Yeah.
championship, obviously. And how special was it to win it with your sister that was on the team?
The best. So we lost the first 2 sets of the national championship. And we were pretty defeated. I don't think that any of us really went to the locker room at halftime thinking that we had already lost. We just weren't used to losing by 2 sets, especially against a team that we played twice and a couple weeks just prior in the conference championship. And so um, when we got to the national championship, Jill and I, it's hard in the NAI, especially. They've changed it since, but when we played, we had to play the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight in one day, turn around the next day and play in the Final Four in the championship. So ultimately, the Final Four game, we played against Park University, and Jill and I bickered a little bit during that game, which if anybody knows this, as competitive as we are, as much as we love each other, we love to bicker. We always have on the volleyball court. We did bicker a little bit that game, but we kind of looked at each other like, we got to chill. We have to relax. Don't let it get to our heads. And so I think that really helped going into the national championship that night because we had won the Final Four. Very emotional. Went back to the hotel, took a nap, refreshed, and then we just kind of like looked at each other like, this is it. We've been playing together our whole lives. This is my last volleyball game ever. Um, we have to do it. So again, it was kind of just an unspoken thing between us
Mhm.
um, that we knew was our last game together. And so I think that made it even more special.
So now you went into coaching after your playing career, and what was the difference from becoming a player to now you're a coach now? What
Sure.
did you not expect in coaching?
Yeah, so I actually didn't even really consider being a graduate assistant right away.
Yeah.
I was kind of asked if I would have liked to pursue the opportunity because I mean, I now looking back on the coaching that I've done compared to a player, sometimes I think that I'm a better coach than I'm a player, or than as I was a player. I just feel like the transition was easy for me just because I feel like I've always kind of looked at the game from a bird's eye view. I feel like I have a really high volleyball IQ, which that's not bragging by any means. I again was just raised by great coaches who had instilled that in me.
Yeah.
And so it was different because I was then a graduate assistant coaching girls that I had played with literally months prior.
Mhm.
Um, and I knew how they played. I feel like though we had such a great relationship as teammates that it wasn't really a hard transition for me just because I had their respect and they had mine. There were times where it was difficult. Like, I am not a great middles coach. Like, I'm not at the net. I was always a back row player. I was always setting. And so sometimes those relationships kind of butted heads. But as the coaching staff, I wasn't the coach going over to them saying, hey, correct this, whatever. But I
Mhm.
more kind of took the reins on that. And so I don't know, I feel like it was a pretty smooth transition. I think one of the hardest things for me as a coach was having to watch Jill play her last volleyball game, knowing that I had won my senior, my final game ever. And, there's only one team in every division that can say they won their last game they ever played. And
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate to say that. But it was really hard to watch Jill as a coach, lose to a team in the national championships, not the national championship game, but, the final day and have to go through that. So it's definitely a hard thing as a coach.
For sure. And then what age did you coach when you were a volleyball coach in Kansas City?
Sure. So I coached at a very big club in Kansas City. I do know myself and I just work better with older girls.
Mhm.
So I coached 16s, 15s, 16s, 17s, and 18s while I was there. I was kind of with the same team for a couple of years throughout their career. And so I was coaching, teenagers, high schoolers the whole time.
What so did you guys, so it was like a club team. Did you guys
Yep.
have like nationals for that too then? Like
Yep,
throughout the
so
season?
that's was something really exciting, one of my favorite, memories thus far in my life as a coach. I was coaching a twos team, and, I had kind of put the team together at tryouts. I was brand new to Kansas City. I had just moved down there after graduating, um, from my master's degree program at Hastings, and so I moved down there with my husband, Drew, as he was finishing chiropractic school, and I was like, I know that it's the springtime. I had looked at coaching opportunities around. I had some opportunities pop up within the college world that were presented to me, but I knew that I wanted to be with Drew.
Mm.
And so I moved down to Kansas City. There wasn't a lot of coaching or college opportunities to coach collegiately down there at the time. So I just found a club that I thought that I would excel at. And so I got put with a 16s twos team, which I was able to put together myself. And ultimately, twos teams traditionally aren't qualifying for the national tournaments within the club scene. It's just very intense. Club volleyball is. I mean, a lot of people like to talk about high school sports. Club volleyball is a whole different beast, especially in Nebraska and in the Kansas City area. And so my team, we competed in Colorado at one of the national qualifying tournaments, and we placed second out of like 150 teams. So that was awesome. Just a core memory for me for those girls because, club, again, it's different. Most of the ones teams across the country are Division 1 volleyball players, and these girls, they all were able to play that, but they're not 6'5".
Mhm.
They haven't, like, been playing on a ones team their whole life. So my goal as a twos teams coach was to just make sure, they're getting the best training they can get. And ultimately we qualified and, you know, got to go to Vegas, and it was super fun. So
Wow. Sounds like a real underdog story. That's cool.
Yeah, it was. It was awesome. You know, those girls are in college now, and I still text them all the time because, you know, again, as a coach, it's not just going to practice, it's just building that relationship too. And, you know, just the respect they trust you, you trust them to, you know, listen to you and get the job done. And they did. So
So you said it was called a twos team. What is a ones team and a twos team? Like what is the
sure.
difference?
Yeah. So in club volleyball, ultimately at every age level, they have like the 16 ones, the 16 twos, the 16 threes.
Okay.
The 16 ones team is like the top team at the club.
Okay.
And those girls are typically, you know, normally, at least where I was coaching Division 1 athletes, um, who had been, you know, this core team for years, you know, just, you know, varsity athletes. I was lucky enough because my twos team kind of had a mix, because the club was so big. So I had a lot of girls who are really, really good at volleyball on my twos team. So they're not the girls that are might be going Division 1, but they still are great, great volleyball players. And
Mhm.
so yeah.
Nice. So you go into your coaching career and you're in Kansas City with your husband Drew, like you said, and you kind of you move back to Nebraska and kind of
Hmm.
explain the reason for that and what
Sure.
life had in store for you after your volleyball coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. So last December, or no, excuse me, last October, Drew and I were living in Kansas City, kind of going through a hard time. I was experiencing some like I don't even know how to explain them, just some weird symptoms going on with me that I had kind of been experiencing. I think the first time I actually recognized them was when I was a GA coaching. I had a headache every day. I just was nauseous all the time. Couldn't figure out why. I was like, oh, I'm getting a little older, so maybe it's just like, you know, the female body just changing, whatever.
Mhm.
And so a couple of years had gone by and I was experiencing pretty bad headaches. And then last October, I had been experiencing some like what they called seizure spells, just small things that would happen to me throughout the course of 2022. I would have weakness in my hands, my right side of my body, my foot would go numb, I lose my speech.
Huh?
And they would only happen for like 5 to 10 seconds at a time. And coincidentally, every time I would play sand volleyball or I'd be peppering on my drive with my husband playing volleyball, something would happen. And I was not quite sure what it was, but me being irresponsible for myself at the time, I wasn't really thinking much into it, until I actually had a pretty bad seizure in the middle of the night, which ultimately led me to the ER. And so that was kind of scary.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when I was in the ER, nothing really happened. They just chalked it up as like a sleep apnea episode, which was unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. And
Mhm.
then so that was actually in Lincoln. I was at my sister's house. And then I was able to get an MRI a month later. They're just super backed up, um, with their machines. And like I couldn't go anywhere in Kansas City and get an MRI to save my life. So then I eventually got an MRI, which ultimately led to doctors finding out that I had a brain tumor, which was a meningioma. Thankfully, it was benign. So it's non-cancerous, and that was very fortunate for me. However, the tumor was about the size of a racquetball. And so that sat just up in my left frontal lobe. And the unfortunate thing, normally, if it's a meningioma, especially benign, they can just, you know, surgically take it out. However, mine has grown into my superior sagittal sinus vein, which is the main vein in your head. And so mine grew into that, which was, you know, pushing on the right side of my brain, which is why I was having all these symptoms on the right side of my body. And so that was very scary because I had never experienced anything like that before. I was fortunate growing up. I never really had any injuries. In volleyball, I was not a trainer athlete. I never had to go see the trainer. Just very fortunate, growing up without having anything, you know, not great happen to me. And then this kind of hit. And like I said, Drew and I were kind of going through a hard time at the time. He had got laid off from his job. And so that hit us too. And so ultimately we moved back to Omaha because we found a neurosurgeon that was willing to, dive in and, take the tumor out as best he could, because we had gotten a lot of crappy answers from neurosurgeons in the Kansas City area. Just, this isn't good, we aren't sure what's going to happen if we try and remove it all. And
Mhm.
so we were confident in a surgeon that we found in Omaha, and we're both from Nebraska. And so it was great. So that's why we moved back. I had surgery early January 2023. Scary stuff. I was not expecting them to cut my head open from ear to ear and remove the tumor, but ultimately it led to, I feel so much better. Don't have really any headaches anymore. And so scary stuff. And I have to get checked on all the time because I, again, still have tumor in my head, unfortunately, but feeling much better now.
Oh, that's great that you feel better now. And you think like obviously what you went through all very scary, but
Yeah.
like do you think like the not knowing, like when you didn't know what it was, do you think that was like one of the most scary things? Because I know someone that's gone through medical issues, that's like if you don't know, it's like, man, what's like wrong? You
Yeah.
know?
Well, funny enough, and this is like insensitive, and I do admit that now, but over the course of the last few years when I wasn't feeling good, I
Mhm.
would jokingly talk with Drew and be like, I don't feel so good right now. My tumor is acting up again, without actually knowing that I had a tumor.
Oh wow, that's
So it's like my intuition was something's wrong. Maybe you do have a tumor, but it was just a joke. And
yeah.
it's sad that I would even joke about that now,
Mhm.
because there are people that suffer and have no idea that that's actually what's affecting them. But
Mhm.
for me, it was like, oh, I actually do have a tumor inside my brain. And so, yeah, I mean, feel like now too, just knowing that I still have it, it does affect me in ways for my pregnancy, which
Mhm.
is unfortunate. But, ultimately they got most of it out. And, later on in life, I'll probably have to have it taken out again.
Mhm.
So it will continue to grow, or I'll have to have radiation or something. But I'm just blessed that, it's been taken care of the best it could for the moment.
Yeah. So like going through like your whole medical thing, obviously your husband Drew was there for you a lot, and who else
Mhm.
was there for you that helped you through this like pretty really difficult time?
Yeah. So I actually have 10 siblings. And so I had quite the sibling power behind me.
Nice.
Again, I have a couple of siblings that have some small medical things, nothing crazy, just like little things that are treated. And so I was the first of all of us to really have something wrong,
Mhm.
which is crazy to say. Like, how lucky are we that there's 10 of us and, one truly terrible thing has happened. And so I had all of them in my corner. Of course, my mom and my dad. My mom is a nurse and she's just very, very smart when it comes to all things medical. She's been a nurse for so long. And so she was able to kind of guide me through it too. My husband's family was great. My husband's mom, Renee, was always in my corner, helping us with appointments and, just being super proactive about the situation. She has a lot of good connections. And so she was also a really great resource for us. And then, of course, my friends, Wes, your family, everybody was all in my corner. I was very fortunate to have a GoFundMe set up for me, which helped pay for a lot of my medical expenses. And so that was just overwhelming at the time, because how do you thank that many people that were in your corner? And of course, a large part of it too was the Hastings College volleyball community. I was very fortunate again to have such great teammates, but with great teammates came amazing parents too. And so I was just very fortunate to have so many people behind me.
Yeah, for sure. So going through your volleyball ups and downs, and then obviously your life with your medical, what is it? What is your outlook on life of just like facing every day with adversity?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like I'm still kind of in some sort of adversity, just like
Mhm.
navigating my life, like being pregnant for the first time, and we're welcoming our first baby in 2 months. So I would say I am a worrier. Warrior, not warrior. And so I don't know. I feel like, I always tell my husband this. It's like we can be so negative about so many little things. I'm like, but we're so blessed to have like
Yeah.
so many greater things um surrounding us. We both have great jobs. We both love our careers. Why are we dwelling on these tiny little things that, are affecting us? I feel like too, the phrase, and this is like a phrase that people talk about when you're getting married, like, don't let your partner go to bed unhappy. And we take that and tune it with our own life. Like, we might, or we don't ever try to go to bed unhappy, not
Mhm.
only for our relationship, but just for our mental health in general.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be somebody that's, pissing you off, but you always have to reflect on their situation because you were also in a bad situation at one point too. So maybe they're not having a great day. So why go to bed, thinking the worst when there's much worse things that could happen or that could be happening to you. So
Yeah, for sure.
trying
And
to stay positive.
yeah, and like, for like you and I, like we're lucky enough we got out of the hospital, and we don't
Right.
have to go there several times a week or every day. And there are some people like they're just there all the time, and
I know.
it's just
Definitely.
like it's just crazy. Like, um, I would walk when I'd be in the hospital. I'd have to exercise. You had to walk the hallways, and it was always kind of just looking in people's rooms, like, man. And then if you left and I got to go home and they didn't, you wonder if they got to go home. So
Yeah. I think about that a lot too.
yeah. Is
Yeah.
there did you meet anybody at the hospital when you were going through all your through your tumor thing that really made an impact on your life?
I had really great nurses. My neurosurgeon, who's Dr. Guard, he's with MD West One in Omaha. He's just been a light. I don't know. He's like, you think when you think of surgeons and neurosurgeons, you think they're gonna be super intense and they're focused on their job. But a reason why we chose him to also do my surgeries because he was very invested in not only taking out my brain tumor, but just my life in general and improving my quality of life. And so, um, just due to all the couple of surgeries I had to have when I was there, I was pretty isolated. It was still, masks on when you're in the hospital and whatnot. And so, and I was in the ICU for a day or two, and then they put you on a floor with you know, people who also are going through pretty traumatic experiences. So I did not meet anybody patient-wise, but there definitely were some great nurses and doctors who helped me out
Yeah,
throughout the whole thing.
that's awesome. Yeah, the ICU is no joke. It's like I just want
Yeah,
to be up in my room. Like
I
this space is
know.
awful.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. It was my first time I'd ever had surgery in general, and so I was pretty nervous for that, but like
Yeah.
I said, nurses made it very easy and comforting for me. I did have, I guess, a nurse that I checked into the hospital and then 5, 6 days later, she came and checked on me, and I hadn't seen her since, she put my IV in day 1, and she just said, "I've been thinking about you the whole time." Like, so that was special because you don't know who's thinking about you, especially when they have so many other patients.
Yeah, he seems to like be that one nurse that really attaches to you on. Like I've had that happen too, and it's just kind of nice thing. Like, oh, they actually they don't really know me, but they really care and they
Right,
want to
for
see me
sure.
get out of here. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So now, what is obviously a goal of yours? That gonna have a kid and first
Yeah.
child, but what else are some of your main goals in life after becoming a mom?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be a mom. I have sisters and brothers that have children. I have almost 20 nieces and nephews, and so I've always loved being around kids. So I think the hardest part, just to rewind just a little bit, last year, Drew and I were like, let's have a baby. Like, we're ready. We've been together for such a long time. We want to take that step and be parents together. And unfortunately, that couldn't happen. And so when we had the opportunity and the go to do so, we were. So Drew and I ultimately are excited to start our family and have some more kids in the future. But I really love what I do. I've been in social media for a few years now for some larger companies. And so really focusing on my career and, Volleyball is my first love, I would say.
Mhm.
I did not get to coach last year. It's pretty hard, not being able to, just because I knew I was having surgery at the beginning of the season, and I had to recover for 3 months, and so I did not get to coach, and then we moved to Omaha, and I still don't get to coach because 'cause I'm having a baby in February, so didn't make sense for me to take on a team, but ultimately just focusing on my career, and getting back into volleyball, wherever I can. And so, yeah, I don't really have any other big goals at the moment. I think my main focus is on, all things baby and just trying to navigate that because I know I have not quite experienced it yet, but everyone says, when you have a baby, your life changes. And so I think I'm going to take that kind of head on first and then develop some bigger goals for myself. So,
Yeah, he can make it. Jake can make it for this episode, but he has a daughter, and like he says his life changed, but he's loving it, and
yeah,
you guys will love it too. And so I'm really excited for you guys to have it. So congrats.
yes, we're excited. We're excited for you to meet her.
Yeah. So well, thanks for coming on and sharing your story, and good luck with the rest of your pregnancy. And I'm glad your medical stuff is all healed up, and
Thank
good to see
you.
you coaching volleyball again. So
Yes, I'm really excited to get back into it, hopefully sooner rather than later.
yeah, thanks, Mikayla.
All right. Thanks, Wyatt.